Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Digital Law Podcast, brought to you by Digital Law and produced by Anson Evaluate. As a bit of background, we at Digital Law are a niche law firm specialising and working solely in the technology and cybersecurity law sector. In each episode, we look at the recent stories in the news relating to digital technology from around the world, with a specific emphasis on data protection and cybersecurity. For more information on the stories that we are covering this week, check the links in our show notes. By way of an introduction, I'm Amelia Davies, an apprentice solicitor at Digital Law UK, and I'm joined by Peter Wright, and I'll let Peter introduce himself, and we will dive right in.
Hi everyone, my name is Peter. I'm a solicitor and the Managing Director at Digital Law. And in this episode, we're going back to our usual sort of looking at what has been in the news. So lots of hacks and things. So if you've enjoyed our last couple of episodes, which were sort of specials on the Online Safety Act and on Getty Images and other associated AI litigation, this is more of the sort of general waffle around tech and data. So I'll pass back to Amelia.
Thanks, Peter. So yes, we are going to be looking at a variety of hacks in our first story, followed by the LNER cyber attack, the Australian lawyer who submitted fake AI cases, lessons from a GDPR fine in McDonalds, Poland, an AI firm that says its technology is being weaponised by hackers, and the South Yorkshire Police Department deleting 96,000 pieces of digital evidence. But before we dive into today's stories, here is some background information on our podcast producer, Anson Evaluate. Anson Evaluate are a consultancy company offering a variety of services, including data protection training, outsourced data protection officer services, and specialising in advising clients over multiple jurisdictions. Kicking off with our first story, and I've just kind of entitled this Hacks in quite a general overview, because there have been a few, and some of which are linked. So firstly, we've got millions of personal records belonging to customers of Gucci, Balenciaga, Bryony, and Alexander McQueen have been stolen by hackers. The data, which includes names, contact details, addresses, birth dates, and purchase histories, was reported to have been taken during cyber attacks on the brands by the Shiny Hunters group. This is quite interesting actually, because allegedly they've stolen 56 million customer records in two attacks. So one last year on Gucci and another in April this year on the other brands. And the Shiny Hunters, also known as Shiny Corp cyber criminal group, has since claimed that they've merged with a group called Scatter Spiders, creating a Telegram channel to promote their hacks. And you're thinking, well, why are we going through, the name of the hackers? Well, the hacker group, Scattered Spiders, was actually linked to the massive attack on M&S, Jaguar, and Land Rover earlier this year. So you've got this massive kind of group now of hackers that are targeting these massive brands, kind of from luxury to everyday. Whether you want to call M&S an everyday brand, I'm not sure, but certainly not in this economy. But I move on. We are seeing that these big retailers are being targeted.
Indeed, and it's, I suppose, when you look at the names of the hacker collectives, at least we're moving on from the days of Cozy Bear and Fancy Bear from Russia. So now we've got these different collectives, as you say, that have been responsible for some really significant cyber attacks this year, very high-profile ones. You mentioned there M&S. It's only now have they started getting their internet shopping business back on its feet. And that was the spring when that
was around happened. Easter time.
Yeah, that was sort of April, May time. So it's it just shows that when there is a large-scale attack of this type and you're trying to work out, well, what's the cost? What are the losses? Well, you've lost 4 or 5 months worth of business there. They've lost the summer season.
You've lost a lot of season, and also then you've lost a lot of public confidence. The M&S attack was everywhere, and if you've got, the type of household that is able to shop an M&S losing confidence in you, it's really going to hit that profit margin.
And it puts you off the next time you go on there and it says, please enter your credit card information here. It does the back of your head. You're thinking, oh, I don't know about this.
Yeah, and I think that's just it, and you'll see that as we go on to our next story as well, and related to the LNER. It really is shaking public confidence in these big companies, and maybe that is the underlying factor here. Maybe that is the purpose of these hacks or attacks.
Yeah, and it also shows it doesn't matter who you are vulnerable to these sorts of exploitations, unfortunately. I mean, I couldn't help but think, I'm afraid, back to, I'm going back a few years, but there was one of those sort of big luxury brands that contacted us looking for help around compliance and security, and I think they decided we were too expensive. Ironically, because
Indeed,
when you look at the, I remember looking at how much they charged for a single baseball cap and thought, I don't think in comparison we're that expensive proportionately. But the point is that it is worth being able to demonstrate when everything goes wrong that you have thought about data security measures, that you have thought about putting data of customers and card users beyond reach, and that you've minimized the risks inherent in these sorts of attacks. When you're looking at such large volumes of personal data having been breached, it does make you think that, well, maybe it was rather easy to exfiltrate all of that data compared to if the system had been more consciously built to avoid the exfiltration of such large volumes of personal data.
I think the other thing worth mentioning here as well is the fact that, in this day and age, cybersecurity is paramount, and to an extent, an attack is not if but when.
Yeah.
So, being able to have a clear plan in place to deal with this, which clearly, if you've got 56 million customer records being attacked, probably not have a plan to be able to deal with that. That needs to be, a very high priority. And this is where I add in a really lovely kind of plug here to the virtual conference that you'll be chairing with MBL, where you will be speaking about cyber breach kits and responses.
Yes.
So that's my plug there. Over.
Indeed, yes. So, that's coming up. That's next
October the 8th, if I remember correctly.
There we go. And that's a sort of one-day event, which I'm speaking at and chairing. So I'll have the opportunity to hopefully speak to some of the speakers that come up and ask them a few questions. And hopefully it will just be a good day where you get to hear from lots of different talking heads on these sorts of issues. And just going back to our actual story there, I think you might wonder why I was saying, well, what about, talking about data security and compliance when this is an issue around data being hacked and exfiltrated. But when you look at the figures that you quoted there, which was what, 56 million, you can't help but think there's an awful lot of data there that's probably legacy data. So if you'd got a good data retention policy in place and you're putting personal data beyond use of your older customers and sales records, surely that would mean that sort of volume couldn't be at risk.
Yes, because I don't feel like there's 56 million customers at the moment that would be shopping at Gucci. I might be wrong, but that seems like an awful lot of people that can afford.
Out of an EU market of what, 400 million people?
Yes.
The idea that 50 million of them have made a purchase from Gucci in the last year might be
It sounds a bit far-fetched to me, but nonetheless.
It's a lot of handbags.
Yeah. I mean, moving on to our next story, which again is another attack. We're looking at the LNER cyber attack. So LNER has urged customers to be vigilant after passenger details accessed in a cyber attack and data breach at a third-party supplier, and involves contact details and some information about previous journeys. So that might include information about delay repay. And if you are a regular train user, I'm sure you'll be familiar with various delay repay systems that are available out there. Essentially, the train operator has urged customers to be wary of unsolicited communications after revealing some passengers' contact details and journey records have been accessed. So LNER at the moment have said no bank or payment details or password information has been accessed, but yet to really confirm a lot of other things of information about what has happened.
It was really noticeable on that when you look at that previous article, it made clear the figure of 56 million. And then on this LNER one, it's like some records, like, that's vague, isn't it? That could be, it's just the records of all transactions within the last hour. Or it could be all the transactions since LNER was set up, which is 10
And that could include customers and staff alike as well. Because if we're looking at journeys, people have to drive the trains or work on the trains. So there is that involved as well. But again, this is going back to kind of something we mentioned in a few of our other podcasts, the fact that hackers and attackers are clearly targeting UK critical infrastructure Train lines being one of them, and one of them, again, if you're familiar with the UK train infrastructure, they don't need any help being rubbish.
Well, yes.
That's a sweeping statement, but I don't think it's untrue.
What famously Europe's most expensive rail service or
sounds
something.
about right.
Apparently the German one is not quite as expensive, but fairly reliable as well. So apparently this is actually a sort of Western G7 economies at the moment that are struggling to provide even the most basic services. But the fact that, yes, they are being on the receiving end of these sorts of attacks, it shows that this sort of aspect of what is really fairly critical national infrastructure is at risk all the time anyway. Not necessarily by, foreign nation state actors. It's just the fact that they have such large, juicy volumes of data that are available.
Yeah.
That can then be hacked, exfiltrated, sold to the highest bidder, which can then be used for ransomware and God knows what. So, they are. If you are operating a train network in the UK, you're going to be a target. This is just merely proving that it is. The fact that LNER is of all these franchises, this is one that has been owned and managed by the government long term.
Yeah.
So most of them only came back into public ownership during COVID. LNER was because the franchise had collapsed before COVID. That this has been a government concern for quite a few years, and therefore somewhat concerning that it's been on the receiving end of this attack, which suggests that, they had not followed the government's own advice from things like the NCSC and the ICO.
Fills you with confidence, doesn't it? I'm sure we'll be covering this again in kind of the next couple of podcasts when more information comes out about what has happened and actually kind of the resulting factors, who has been affected and what is actually going to be done. So I'm sure the ICO will end up stepping in at some stage.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting to see what they have to say about things.
Indeed.
But moving on to our next story, we are looking at an Australian lawyer who submitted fake AI cases and the fact that they've been allowed to stay in practice. So if you're a regular listener of our podcast, you'll note that a few podcasts ago that we discussed the fact that an Australian lawyer submitted fake AI cases and was found out. The judge looked into the cases and really questioned them. Well, where did this come from?
Yeah.
And the lawyer said, well, ChatGPT. And the question was raised, well, why didn't you double check this? Which, you would think that someone would, but apparently common sense is not as common as it is labelled.
So this highlights a few of the typical issues with the use of AI. So first of all, very often when I'm speaking to people in the legal profession, they say, oh, well, this only happens when you're using like the freebie version of ChatGPT. If you use a premium AI, this doesn't happen. Well, guess what? They've done some research and apparently something like 90% of the use of AI in law firms is the freebie versions of ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So we do know that legal practitioners are using the free versions for legal research and to help them with drafting. And this then circles back to the other point around large language models, particularly the large freebie versions. They will hallucinate, and they will hallucinate quite badly. Even the most up-to-date versions of ChatGPT, the paid-for versions, GPT-4, GPT-5, they will hallucinate. And in this instance, in its eagerness to please, based on the prompts that it was given, it actually wholesale manufactured these cases and indeed comes up with fake case references. So it looks perfectly genuine. Yeah. And you want to think, oh, great, it's done the difficult work for me. Now I can get on with doing something else. And in this instance, of course, it was just total gibberish. This was from an article from the Law Society Gazette. It's one of those when you scroll down to the comments section, you've got various wags saying, well, this is what happens when you rely on Lambert and Butler as a case reference, or Morecambe and Wise, or Hale and Pace, the well-known case. But unfortunately, that the way that these things hallucinate is it's not obvious that what you're seeing is fake. To the untrained eye, it would look perfectly genuine. But unfortunately, as lawyers, we do kind of have to know
We do have a certain standard.
What does a genuine citation look like? And if something comes up that's too good to be true, you've then got to check and think, okay, well, has this ever been referenced in any other articles or pieces or judgments, or indeed find the original judgment perhaps? But really, you should be cross-referencing any piece of work that you ask these large language models to do, rather than just rely on them in their entirety, lest you find yourself in the same position as this lawyer in Australia. What he's been, I think is he suspended?
Well, essentially, he was pretty high up in his firm, so he had very much a supervisory role. However, he is now being supervised himself and is only able to be an employee solicitor rather than like a managing partner or something like that. Which again has a huge impact on his professionalism, and then that lasts for 2 years. I do want to circle back to what you're saying, though, Peter, and the fact that AI actually can be used for good, and it can be used in law even as the freebie version. But it is just a matter of review what it's squirted out the other end. Check and cross-reference things that have been given. But it can be used as a great starting point, particularly in more creative aspects as well. If you think about LinkedIn posts and stuff like that,
Having said that, the volume of AI-generated slop on LinkedIn at the moment is really annoying me. You can tell if a post has got AI's fingerprints on it because it's excessively wordy, it's designed to game the algorithm. And to be honest, if I'm looking at a post, I would rather see something genuine that I know a human being has written and is actually sharing a piece of valued insight or experience, rather than, oh, I did this, I did that, and please sign up for my course here. And emoji, and you're like, that's not human English very often, and it sticks out like a sore thumb, and you think it's there because the author is lazy.
And that's on kind of, again, this lawyer was somewhat lazy in submitting this for the court, and therefore he has going to have to accept the consequences of that.
And it's unfortunately, if you're in a supervisory position and you were not checking, and the thing is as well, if you're the supervisor, you should be then setting by example. So your staff should know what you expect of them in terms of where they're getting any case citations from and what they're using to back up the information that's in there. So to a certain extent, you think, oh, well, he was the supervisor rather than the person drafting it. But, it's that whole thing, the fish rots from the head. So you can't have then the rest of his firm thinking, oh, it's fine to do that.
I think it's worth noting as well that this is an Australian case, and similar cases have come through the courts in England and Wales, but the consequences are yet to be dealt with by regulators in this country. So the approach of another jurisdiction, that could have, set a potential precedent for us.
It does, and indeed, it's also kind of, how can I put this? We shouldn't be having to wait for regulators to turn around and give us any communication from on high on this. It's obvious what we should or should not be doing in relation to the use of AI, and the regulators have issued guidance. It's okay, we're not necessarily getting to the end of the rank of sort of SDT decisions or anything, or investigations and inquiries from the SRA, but I'll argue it is still very, very clear what standards we should be following when it comes to the use of AI in delivering legal services, and these cases from overseas just serve to illustrate the point.
Thanks, Peter. So moving on to our next story, we are looking at McDonald's. Way to make me hungry. And this is a lesson from a GDPR fine. So McDonald's Poland and the Polish Data Protection Authority have been fined. So recently the UODO, which is the Polish Data Protection Authority, issued a GDPR fine of 3.8 million to McDonald's Poland, along with additional penalties for its processor, 24/7 Communication SP. The Enforcement Action Officer sharp reminded that outsourcing data processing does not outsource accountability. Essentially, McDonald's Poland entrusts sensitive employee data, including names, PESEL numbers, which is a Polish national ID, passport details, job roles, and shift information to 24/7 Communication, a third party responsible for managing an employee scheduling module. Due to misconfigured servers and a lack of basic security controls, this data was exposed on a publicly accessible server. The breach affected employees of McDonald's corporate-owned and franchise restaurants. And while the organisation had signed a data processing agreement, otherwise known as a DPA, the agreement alone wasn't enough to satisfy the GDPR's stringent requirements for accountability and security. And therefore, the supervisory authority found multiple serious violations by both parties. And as I was discussing, Peter, before recording this, I was saying, well, this is something we do encourage our clients to do, is not just say, oh, great, we've got a DPA, that's our due diligence done. No, but to actually look at what the DPA contains. What is in there? Does it appropriately configure for GDPR, and in this case, the UK Data Protection Act? What is it actually saying, and does it hold any water? Because it's all well and good to, slap a document together labeled DPA, just have kind of very broad information in it and say, well, that's done. Well, that is not appropriate, and this is what this is demonstrating.
Yeah. Indeed. In this instance, I suspect that McDonald's thought, oh, we've signed a DPA and it was a very long document, surely that's fine. Well, no. That agreement was not sufficiently thorough. Furthermore, even though they'd signed that, it turned out that the data wasn't being processed in the manner that they had expected. So this is where you have to go and audit your supplier and make sure that this data is being looked after. And this is the data of their employees. So an organisation like McDonald's, large volume of employees.
Absolutely.
And you'd be thinking, well, this is data that we do have to make sure is safe and secure. They're relying on it for running their estate. It's information that is high volume, that is going to be regularly added to. People are going to be leaving, people are going to be joining, people are going to have HR records and holiday records and training records, in particular when it comes to food safety and hygiene. So we're talking about an awful lot of very sensitive, or certainly not necessarily reaching the definition of sensitive personal data, but certainly from McDonald's point of view, this is the gold dust. This is the stuff on which their business operates. And in this scenario, just having a large, tedious written document in place wasn't enough. It was the fact that the data processing agreement was not rigorous enough. It wasn't thorough enough, and then furthermore, the standards that even were in there were not actually being applied to the processing of the data.
So yeah, in terms of those failings, we are looking at a lack of due diligence on the processor 24/7 communications and the capacity to safeguard personal data, a failure to implement adequate security measures, unlawful sub-processing, failure to involve the data protection officer, violation of data minimization principles, and improper breach notification. So there are quite a few nails in that coffin there, and most of which are fairly rudimentary issues that are quite easy to get right when done correctly.
Yeah.
So it's quite clear why the regulator has come down so hard here, and that is because you've got quite a number of failings.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as well. There's one point that as well made me think, this is why. I mean, we do act as outsourced data protection officer for a number of organisations, including corporations in Europe, including multinational companies. And the number of times when a particular bit of IT is being procured, it could be AI, it could be a system, it could be a system involved with processing staff data, customer data, and it's the point at which the DPO is involved in that conversation, from our perspective, is sometimes a little frustrating. If that decision around procurement has been taken and we're just being asked to rub a stamp rather than actually being involved in passing that supplier through the eye of a needle before then saying, yeah, okay, this one is sufficiently rigorous and looks like their contract is compliant, therefore good to go. And that would be after we'd looked at things like privacy policies and terms in detail, so that we were satisfied.
As well as the DPA conducting,
exactly.
Due diligence.
And that's just it. In this instance, the DPO I don't think the DPO was even involved in the selection of this contract. And that was another thing that, McDonald's failed to involve the DPO in the process of selection or risk analysis process, excluding a key internal safeguard that might have prevented the breach. And then there's like violation of things like data minimization, which we are always pushing and saying, why are we collecting more data than is necessary for this exercise, or why are we retaining data for longer than is necessary? Let's just keep it in line with data retention. And also things like improper breach notification, remembering again that you have 72 hours and the clock ticks. And then when you do report, it's a matter of giving the right information and working with the regulator. Keeping information back, doing a knowledge is power exercise, or even saying, oh, no, we don't think we need to report this, is never the right thing to do. If in doubt, report it. And if it turns out that it's sort of de minimis and not a major issue, you can tell the regulator that further down the line once you've had a chance to investigate it properly. But if you miss that critical window to report it, and then it looks like you've tried to delay or obfuscate it, you tend to find that regulators have a bit of a sense of humour failure. And that, in this instance, is one of the things that has cost McDonald's €3.8 million.
Thanks, Peter. So moving on to our next story, we are looking at an AI firm that says its technology is being weaponized by hackers. So the US artificial intelligence AI company Anthropic says its technology has been weaponized by hackers to carry out sophisticated cyber attacks. Anthropic, which makes the chatbot Claude, says its tools were used by hackers to commit large-scale theft and extortion of personal data. The firm said its AI was used to help write code, which carried out cyber attacks, while in another case, North Korean scammers used Claude to fraudulently get remote jobs at top US companies. Anthropic said it was able to disrupt the threat actors and has reported the cases to the authorities alongside with improving its detection tools. Using AI to help write code has increased in popularity as the tech becomes more capable and accessible. And Anthropic says it's detected a case of so-called vibe hacking, where its AI is used to write code which could hack into at least 17 different organizations, including government bodies. And it is said that hackers used AI to what we believe is an unprecedented degree. They use Claude to make both tactical and strategic decisions, such as deciding which data to exfiltrate and how to craft psychologically targeted extortion demands. It's even suggested ransom amounts for the victims. I mean, this is all quite scary. The fact that you've got this AI even saying, well, I think you should demand X amount from a company that you've just hacked.
Yeah.
That's quite another level than what we've kind of seen before.
It is, but it's the logical extension of what we've seen before. I mean, before now, you could go and get freely available tools off the dark web for either free or for a tiny amount. And then you use that to do sometimes quite sophisticated, targeted phishing attacks.
Yeah.
Where you could send things that spoof other servers, put together emails and things that look as though they're genuinely from another organization. You can put this together. I've literally seen it done live as a demonstration by a white hat hacker, and it takes seconds. So you already had that tech out there. And we know that one of the main ways, as the article says, that AI is proving to be successful is where coders are using it now. I mean, when we've done exercises with students where we've sort of done workshops on how to code, how much of coding is actually just cutting and pasting, a command for this and a command for that, you put it together and off you go. Well, now you don't even need to have the skill as a programmer to work out how to put it together. You just get the AI to do that for you. And people with no skill or expertise in coding can now produce quite smart looking systems or games or apps. And that's because the AI is doing the coding. So if the AI is doing the coding for all the things on the internet as we know it, it stands to reason that it's going to be doing equally powerful things on the dark web, and therefore making it very easy for people with no actual coding skill or expertise to undertake fairly sophisticated hacks, basically. At least in this instance, I think it's good that Anthropic's been the first one to turn around and say, yeah, we know we've been used for this, we know it's a problem, we're going to do something about it.
Yeah, and I hope that means that other AI models then take precedent from that.
I hope so.
I'd hope so. I mean, I won't hold my breath, but it'd be interesting as well to see what legislators think of this, and in terms of whether they turn around and say, well, you've got to meet a certain boundary in terms of your detection system if your AI is being used for certain activities. But again, that's probably wishful thinking.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole, eh?
on that note, I will move us to the last story of the day. And that is looking at something quite close to home in terms of our officers in Barnsley, and that's the South Yorkshire Police. And so the South Yorkshire Police have deleted 96,000 pieces of digital evidence. And this is digital evidence from officers' body cams. The Information Commissioner's Office, the UK ICO, has highlighted multiple failings related to backup, record keeping, and data management. This comes after an IT upgrade in May 2023 that centralised digital evidence management, so DEMs, to which officers upload and store body-worn video. And this footage began to struggle to process the data, and as a result, it was stored on a local disk on the force's application server. However, on 7th of August 2023, an IT manager at South Yorkshire Police identified a large number of missing files, totalling 96,174. On subsequent investigation, it found that a mass deletion of data had taken place on July 26th of that year, and that's the date a third party was carrying out data transfer activities from a local storage to a storage grid platform. The South Yorkshire Police has not been able to provide a definitive explanation as to how the deletion occurred, however, have explained that it's believed that the data was deleted from the storage grid in error. Although 95,032 pieces of the footage has already been copied from the storage grid to a new system, the poor record keeping means it can't confirm exactly how many files were deleted without copies made. Further issues with the backup solution, which were not resolved despite being known about since 2019, meant there were no fallback measures either. The data lost by the police relates to 126 criminal cases, although only 3 were directly impacted. I mean, only 3, well done. Yeah. Seems small, but nonetheless. And of these 3, only 1 might have progressed to first hearing court if the body cam footage had been available, the OCO ruled. But still, we are seeing that a huge amount of data has just been deleted by the South Yorkshire Police, and with no apparent reason, nor understanding of why it happened. And while, okay, you can argue that only 3 cases, have been affected and only 1 might have made it to the court hearing, that's besides the point. It should not have happened in the first place.
No, that's the concern here. I mean, the only good news is, this only appears to have affected 3 ongoing cases, but bear in mind now the vast amount of digital evidence which is used by the law enforcement agencies and then passed to the CPS and passed to the courts. The body cam footage is crucial if we think about, those public order offences. So when the police are, when you've got law enforcement at public demonstrations and things, what the information recorded in those body cams is crucial.
Yeah.
Not to mention any time, the police get out of a squad car to go and speak to someone, the fact that the whole exchange is more often than not being recorded, it gives security to the police, it gives security to the public in their interactions with the police. So if that isn't available in the event that something really important happens and it was recorded, and we've got to think here, this isn't just 96, whatever there was, the figure of 96,000. So that's not to say that they were all, an awful lot of those will be recordings where something had happened, which was the reason why it was being kept.
Yeah.
That's before we get into the fact that electronic evidence as a whole is so important when we think of, the first thing that happens if someone is arrested. They'll take your phone and they'll take all the information off that. So all the photos, all the emails, all the text messages, all the GPS data, all of the, all the tracking. So even, for example, all the data files off your photos that confirm where you were when that photograph was taken and what Wi-Fi networks you've been in contact with and what phone masts you've been. So all of this stuff is really, really crucial in terms of working out where someone was or was not at a particular key point. And that electronic evidence is increasingly crucial in being able to confirm if someone was or was not present at the commissioning of an offence. And it is therefore crucial that that information is kept securely by the police, that it can be relied on in terms of evidence, in terms of criminal proceedings, that it can be securely used, shared, transmitted to the CPS, used for analysis, sent off for expert work to be carried out in terms of the commissioning of experts' reports. The whole system is reliant on that data being kept and then being kept safely and securely on the government secure internet. And where you've got a problem there with what looks like a supplier, that is a really major issue, and they'll have to make sure that that doesn't happen again, because then they've been lucky this time it only affects 3 ongoing cases. It might affect 300 the next time it happens.
And let's face it, we've all seen enough, crime TV shows to know that evidence is everything in a case. So, it's not going to come as a surprise that this, they need this.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I think it serves as a precedent for other police forces. This is the South Yorkshire Police, but there are many other police forces across the field that can learn from this mistake. Yeah. Because, if one police force is doing it, chances are there's probably issues at others. So I think it's also a very steep learning curve that might have to be taken from this as well.
Indeed.
So that was kind of our last story for this episode. Again, leaving it on a nice uplifting note as always. If you have any questions for anything we have discussed today, please feel free to email us at admin@digitallawuk.com. A summary of today's stories are available on our website, as well as the links to the original stories containing more information. And if you'd like to hear more from us, including information about subscriber-only podcast webinars and events, then please subscribe to Premium via our Patreon channel using the link in the show notes. A big thank you to Anson Evaluate for helping to produce this podcast. And if you'd be interested in hearing more about Anson Evaluate services, please take a look at their website that you can find at www.ansonevaluate.com, or take a look at their cybersecurity Substack with useful information about keeping your business safe online. And just a reminder, these episodes are available on our website, YouTube channel, and podcast channels such as Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and essentially anywhere you can find your podcasts. And please feel free to leave us a review. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next week.